Hello, I'd like to talk about whether Kickstarter is dead or on a decline, those sort of things. There's been some talk about that. Most recently, I backed The Curious Case of... Dexter Ward, is that right? Charles Dexter Ward? I don't remember. But it's from the developers of the also kickstarted Asylum, which hasn't come out yet. I was actually reluctant to back the project because Asylum didn't come out yet, and then I figured, oh, what the hell. But I think, I don't know if I can pronounce his name correctly. I think he's from Argentina, Augustin Cords. Posted this interesting look at Kickstarter and compared the success of Asylum to the failure of Dexter Ward, and also referenced an article on GameSpot or something that talked about the supposed decline of Kickstarter for video games. And I think a lot of it was that they were looking at, I think, by the number of projects successfully funded in the game space, there was maybe like a 20% decline when looking at the first half of this 2014 and extrapolating versus all of 2013, which, again, I don't know if that's the best measure, because, again, 20% is not a huge percentage, and you're extrapolating, 50% of your data. It would be more interesting how they looked at the first half of 2013 versus the first half of 2014 or something along those lines, or because I think there's better and worse months to launch a Kickstarter. So that number isn't super meaningful, but a different number is that there was a huge decline in the amount the projects have raised. And I think that's largely because there haven't been any hugely successful projects this year compared to last year, when Mighty Number 9 was an absolute juggernaut. And certainly one could say that the large projects of this year have failed. Human Resources was asking for $1.4 million and they canceled it. But I'm not sure that's entirely a fair comparison, because when you look at these large projects, a lot of it has less to do with the amount they're asking for. Well, I mean, obviously that's important, but it's like you're investing in something, and so it's very possible that from year to year some different companies will be doing that, and certainly there's some big Kickstarter projects that were launched in the past that are wrapping up. I think Wasteland 2 came out, and I don't know what the deal is with the Tides of Numeria, and I don't know, some of the other really successful ones. So I think if you're looking at just averages, there's going to be things that really offset the average, or gross revenue. But that's certainly not the only things put forth in the post-mortem of Charles Dexter Ward. I should have looked up the name of the game. Well, I wanted to speak more generally, but I think there's some interesting points there that I wanted to talk about, and certainly I hope that Kickstarter's not on a decline, but I think it's potentially it's worth examining. So a lot of it was that it was harder to get backers and harder to get press, which I think in general it's really tough to get press, although certainly there were some good mentions. IGN had a thing on the first H.P. Lovecraft game, and but I think press doesn't want to report on Kickstarters as readily as perhaps they used to. And that, I think, is a challenge for game developers. But I think rather than talking specifically about your Kickstarter, you should really try and generate buzz for your game. And I think that's something. I think I was reading a postmortem of the Red Hook Studios' Darkest Dungeon, which was really successful. And I think they said they generated a lot of the community beforehand, before launching their game. And I think that's really a better approach, and something we tried to do with Neverending Nightmares, is that we tried to announce the game, get people excited about the game, get people looking forward to the game before we did the Kickstarter. Because I think it's important to try and build that buzz, try and build that audience. And so certainly for our next Kickstarter, I think we will, have a bunch of stuff out there. We'll have a whole round of press, and then if it's something, the press is getting excited about, something that seems cool, then I think it'll be easier for our Kickstarter, because then it's kind of like, oh yeah, this neat thing we reported on is now on Kickstarter. Maybe press will run that. Possibly not. Just because, again, I think the press does not want to seem like they're encouraging you to back a particular project on Kickstarter, because then if the project fails, then they kind of feel like they let their community down. So I think while you're doing your Kickstarter, you really have to have more interesting news lined up that's not just, we're on Kickstarter now. I think that you should focus your interviews and your things and pitch ideas other than just, we're doing Kickstarter. Because I don't think that's news, and I think there's so many projects on Kickstarter, and if people want to find cool projects on Kickstarter, they should go to the Kickstarter website. Whereas if you look at Game Press, then you want to have an angle. You want to try and frame your project as something interesting or special, and I think that's what we did with Neverending Nightmares, and that worked out well for us. Certainly, we did get a lot of mentions about our Kickstarter, and we were very fortunate to have that press support, but I don't think that's something we could count on next time around, and I think that creates some additional challenges for us as the developers. But whether it means that we will be unsuccessful on Kickstarter, or it'll be difficult, impossible on Kickstarter, I don't think that's the case. I think you can still succeed on Kickstarter, but again, I think people are more discerning and more careful now that there's been some unfortunate failures and games that failed to meet expectations. And certainly, I think that does create more challenges, but I think at least for us, we delivered a game that most of the backers are happy with. I hope all of them, but I'm sure there's some that didn't quite, weren't quite happy with the final product. But at least, saying that we delivered something and we had that open communication, I do these things 3 times a week, I think that's something that will work well for us when we do our next Kickstarter, because I think part of funding a Kickstarter is wanting to be involved in that project. And if you back, an Infinite Tap Games project on Kickstarter, then you're definitely going to be involved in the process. And I think people from our Neverending Nightmares community will realize that, and I think new people can look back and say, hey, what else did Infinite Tap Games launch? Hey, they did this Neverending Nightmares. hey, there's like over 100 updates. You know, this is a Kickstarter. You know, these are people that understand Kickstarter, and I think that will work well for us. So, I don't know. Obviously, all this is speculation, and it's really tough to say whether there's waning interest in Kickstarter. I wouldn't say that that's necessarily true. I think backers are being more careful, and I think that's probably better for everyone and the general health of the Kickstarter community, because you don't want to have someone, you know, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me, and then leave the Kickstarter community, because I think it's something really amazing. But again, I don't know, and certainly I'm scared already. I mean, we're like probably 6 months from doing another Kickstarter, and I'm already terrified. It's tough, but at least for us on Neverending Nightmares, it was definitely worth all the effort, because we couldn't have made the game otherwise. So anyway, if you back Neverending Nightmares, thank you very much, and thanks for watching the video.